All right, y'all. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J is live. We are in the building and we got a action-packed show for y'all tonight. We're gonna lead off the show talking about Ebola. It's on the minds and on the hearts of every single person, not just in the United States, but in the world. So we're gonna spend some time talking about it. What is it? What are the symptoms? And a whole bunch of stuff about Ebola we're gonna get to. And after that, we're gonna get into some what the hell. We have some controversial statements made by a former child star we're gonna get into. I want to tell y'all about a man that got crazy with a panhandler, and we got some commentary from the greatest. Ain't no hashtag with Marcus J is right now.
Yeah. It's about that time. It's about that time to get. Yeah.
Button your lip, open your ears, strap on your thinking cap. Socially conscious talk that's entertaining with a dash of humor and the top sports stories of the week. It's time for Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J.
Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago. Manning lobs it. Burris alone. Touchdown, New York.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. He hits one deep to right center. That ball is out of here. The Yankees win the pennant.
If they lying, then they must be half stepping. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J is live. We are back in the studio of Legacy Internet Radio. We are in fact the flagship show of Legacy Internet Radio, heard right here every single Monday night at 7 p.m. You can hear us live every single Monday night on the TuneIn application. Just download TuneIn and search Legacy Internet Radio. Of course, you can hear our replays anytime you want on demand on YouTube. We appreciate the love that everybody's getting. We see the lights are on all over the country already for Ain't No Half Stabbing with Marcus J. Once again, the flagship show of Legacy Internet Radio. We appreciate the love. As we kind of alluded to right there in the intro, we got a lot to get into tonight, so we're not going to waste any time. I always like to introduce the crew that I have with me. And of course, today, joining me in studio, we've got the host of the Tuesday night show here on Legacy Internet Radio. We've got the one, we've got the only, Mr. LP, Mr. Steven Sykes is in the building. What's up, bro?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
Doing great, man. It's good to see you here, man. It's good to see you.
It's been a while. I apologize.
It's been a while. You and I haven't we haven't done radio together in quite a while.
It's
so
been about 3 months.
It's been a while. So I appreciate you being here. We got a lot to get into tonight, and I'm very interested in getting your perspective on the things that we're going to get into. So I'm going to, of course, jump right into our discussion. I'm going to introduce our special guest that we have with us on the live line. You have heard him here on the airwaves of Ain't No Half Step with Marcus J on Legacy Internet Radio before. You've also heard him guest hosting on the Warren Ballantyne show, as well as co-hosting on Blackonomics on the Empowerment Radio Network. I've got my brother and I've got my friend and now my mentor. I got my brother Dave in LA on the line. What's up, bro?
Man, that's I'm gonna have to send you a big check, silver and gold for that one, bro. What's up, Marcus? How you doing, man?
Did I do all right? I did okay. That was good.
Too much, man. Too much.
My brother. All right. Well, good, man.
In this together.
It's good to talk to you. We haven't had an opportunity to have you on our show in a while, and of course, usually when there's some big stuff going on, I want to kind of come to you and kind of see what your perspective is, and kind of see a week in roundtable. And of course, with this worldwide soon-to-be epidemic. We're not quite there yet, but I think a lot of us think that we may potentially end up dealing with an epidemic with regards to Ebola. I want to kind of educate the Ain't No Half Stepping with Marcus J listeners here on Legacy Internet Radio what it is. So we're going to have a discussion about it, you and I, Mr. LP, and any guest that decides they want to join us, feel free to hit us up in social media. We got our live line tied up right now by Dave, so we can't take any phone calls, but certainly make sure if you're listening to us, we're all on social media. Of course, there's the Legacy Internet Radio fan page. Just search Legacy Internet Radio is there. If you've got a comment or concern or anything that you want to get in on this discussion, by all means, hit us up in social media. We'll make sure that we get your comment in and we attribute it directly to you. Now that we've got the particulars out of the way, Dave, let's just jump right in and talk about Ebola. The first thing that we're going to just kind of lay it out there. What is Ebola? We've heard a lot about it. What is it?
Well, Ebola is known as the Ebola virus disease. The acronym for it is EVD, and it's also known as the Ebola hemorrhagic fever. The acronym for that is EHF, and it's been around. It was discovered in the 70s, and it was discovered by, oddly enough, it was discovered by a professor, and it was Professor Peter Pyatt. And what happened with this, it was in former Zaire. There was a Belgian nun that was doing some missionary work in Zaire, and she fell ill. And once she fell ill, the doctors that were there didn't know, exactly what she had. They weren't sure if it was yellow fever or whatever. So they sent a blood sample, a couple of blood samples to this professor. And once the professor received it, he was, they were kind of skeptical as to what its origin was and what it exactly was. So they proceeded to put it under a electron microscope. And once they did that, they were shocked because of it displayed nothing similar to yellow fever or anything else that they suspected it of being. And the only thing that they thought that they seemed similar to this was Marburg virus, which was out of Marburg, Germany, which was also a hemorrhagic fever. So they knew that they had they described it as a worm, a very long worm that was very scary, and they knew that, and it was large and it was really big. So they knew that they had just discovered something that was, was probably new. And they didn't know what to name it. So what they did, they were discussing it over dinner, and one of the American scientists that were with the group said, hey, why don't we just pick one of the rivers that was close to where we found it, and that's where, in the river that they picked was Ebola, and that's how we came about the name of Ebola. So it's basically a hemorrhagic fever that was first discovered in the 70s out of Zaire.
There's been a lot of discussion about Ebola, and I know I've done some research on it. I got a lot of the information that I've got from the CDC as well as from the World Health Organizations, where I got a lot of information about Ebola. And if anybody is listening and you want to kind of research and do some research on your own, those are the sources that I would cite, that I would suggest that you start. And of course, by all means, fact check us. If you have any question, I would encourage you actually to do that. Anybody that's listening, Dave. That's basically what it is. Now, what are the symptoms when it's somebody who happens to wake up with a fever or a cold? I mean, are they going to be running to their doctor to say, hey, I think I got Ebola? Because and the reason why I kind of say it tongue in cheek that way is our country, our government, and even the world to a lesser degree has this thing with fear mongering and getting people riled up, to be fearful of things that they may or may not need to be fearful of. And so I want to kind of talk about the symptoms before we get to how it's transmitted. Let's talk about the symptoms first. Is there some sort of specific way that we need to be looking at our bodies to determine if we may have the Ebola virus?
And that's the thing about it, Marcus, is that the Ebola virus mimics so many other disease viruses and symptoms. So it's really hard to determine if someone has the Ebola virus without doing some investigating work, finding out some things from the person to kind of, to narrow down what it is that it could be. Because with Ebola, some of the symptoms are fever, 101, severe headache, muscle pains, weakness, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and unexplained bleeding.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that mimic that, So they have to do some blood work and to find out exactly what it is that you have. So if you have a headache or muscle pain and diarrhea and everything else, that doesn't mean that you have Ebola. But if you've been in an affected area, I would be very concerned about it then, because of the outbreak that has happened in certain parts of the world.
Right.
So I would be mindful of that. So that's the basic symptoms of it. It's so similar to so many other things, and that's the big problem with it, is that it mimics so many other things.
Yes, the scary thing about that, Dave, is the average Ebola case fatality rate is somewhere around 50%. The fatality rates have varied from 25% to 90%, depending on the past outbreaks and the different strains and that sort of thing. As far as the symptoms, as Dave has mentioned, just because you have some of those types of symptoms, you may not need to be worrying about having Ebola. And there's a lot of memes and a lot of jokes and stuff going around, but this is serious enough to not play with. I would say, sometimes you see a joke pop up and we all say too soon.
Right.
For me, joking about Ebola is too soon. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J live on Legacy Internet Radio. Let's talk about transmission. And the reason why I wanted to save transmission until after we talked about the symptoms is because the symptoms haven't been anything that have been in question. It has been
right.
It has mostly been the transmission. How do you get it? And depending on where you listen, depending on who you're listening to, depending on who you trust, depending on your level of fear and conspiracy theory acceptance and all that kind of stuff will determine how you actually feel about what the actual transmission is. But there are facts that we can actually fall back on. We know that the incubation period is between 2 and 21 days. We also know it is not infectious until the person who actually has it has developed symptoms. But jump in here, Dave. Tell us about transmission. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, you were going to correct. It's everything that you're saying it's what's been publicized and what is talked about. The publicized way of catching Ebola is that you have to be in close contact with someone when they're in their symptomatic phase. And from sweat, from intercourse, from close bodily fluids exchange, that's what's being said. Or if you're eating, the wrong kinds of meat, if you're eating bush meat, if you're in, the countries that have been affected. But there's also, Marcus, that's where the real devil is in the details,
right,
is with how it's contracted. There are also reports, and I've read a report from the general director of WHO, Dr. Margaret Chan, where she said that they must, in August, no, it was earlier in June, July area, where she said that the borders with the bordering countries to the infected areas should start to close their borders, because the migration of the people is the biggest problem, because it's Ebola is showing the ability to be transmitted through airborne transmission. So of course, after she said that, now this is the general director of WHO. Of course, after she said that, soon after, that memo that she put out was taken down, but also there was the Canadian Ministry of Health that said that it's through laboratory testing, that through primates, that Ebola has displayed the ability to be transmitted airborne. and that they believe that it is airborne now, and that has died of it. All of the funeral people have to be careful because it has the ability to be transmitted airborne. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of suppression of information, but for various reasons. But those are some of the things that has been said. I've read those things myself, of course, with the Canadian Ministry of Health. Then all of a sudden that was taken down. They took that sentence out and they replaced it with a more appropriate so-called writings that conformed with the CDC. So you really have to investigate, and you have to be skeptical of everything, because even if you have to say that there are some things about this that they don't know. Maybe it's changed. Maybe now it can survive longer, and that totally changes the whole dynamics of the game. So there's a lot to contend with it. The best thing to do is to be informed on everything so that you can understand what it is and how things are playing out.
Mr. LP, jump in right there.
Yes. Did you? First of all, thank you for coming on the show to inform us, sir. Did you hear about that there was testing in Spain and also Canada regarding, you mentioned Canada already, but regarding airborne, and there was a concern regarding the food meat. And to your point about the WHO right now, 36 minutes ago, Congress is already calling for Obama to restrict the borders, and they're having more general testing. The problem is that we're sending, I think, up to 4,000 troops this week to help contain it. But the concern is about transmitting back and forth. And on top of all of that, now Spain has a patient, a nurse who was working with a missionary group, and a pastor that died. She is now outbreak with Ebola virus as of 2 hours ago.
Yes, very familiar with everything. You're absolutely correct. Yes, this is definitely developing into a more significant outbreak. And let me say this: it's not the poor people that can allow Ebola to become a full-blown pandemic. It's rich people. It's because rich people have the ability to get on planes and to fly to Spain,
right,
and to fly to the U.S. and to fly to other parts of Africa and everywhere else. And because of that, you're allowing this Ebola virus to be introduced through the airways to areas and people that have never seen it before. The only way that happens is if it's coming through transportation. So it's coming through transportation, and it's definitely something that we need to look at. If you're looking to stop Ebola, the first thing you want to do is isolate it where it is.
It's funny. It's funny that you brought that up, Dad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's funny that you brought that up because I normally don't do this. I normally don't allow nonsense to end up on my show, but I'm going to introduce some nonsense on my show tonight because I want people to understand that when you're a powerful radio talk show host, and I'm certainly not referring to myself or Mr. LP here. But when you're a powerful radio host, the most powerful radio host in the country, you have a lot of ears and you have a lot of people that listen to you, not because they think you are just a really great person on the radio, but they actually think that you are the voice for people. So when you got someone like Rush Limbaugh who goes on the radio today and he says, he suggests that the president is refusing to divert flights from Ebola-infected countries and close down America's borders because he believes the nation deserves to be infected, saying, quote, the danger we have now is that we elected people in positions of power and authority who think this or think like this in terms of the country being responsible, this country being to blame for things, and it's kind of thinking that leads to opposition to shutting down airports from various countries. And that's the end of a quote. It leads to, and this is a pickup, it leads to opposition to keeping these people out of their country. How dare we? How can't we turn our backs on them? They exist because of us. We can't turn them away, he said. The suggestion here is we're leaving it open so that we can get some Ebola here in this country. And I bring him up, Dave, because we know that a lot of our white brothers and sisters who are right-winged, some of which are rational people, many of which are not, but some of which are, they listen to this dude every day. And these are people, those of us who are not right-wing, who are not left-wing, who straddle the middle, we got to live with these crazy people. So what's your thoughts on that? There's more kind of, I guess that's kind of my introduction when I led off by saying the nonsense. I'm going to get into some conspiracy theory here in a minute, and I want to talk about some people who came here and got treated and some other people who came here and didn't. But we're going to talk about Rush first. What's your thoughts on that, Dave?
You know, Rush Limbaugh has always been a lightning rod. That's his whole show. That's how because he is a true fearmonger and a race baiter, and that's what his whole show is all about. So I really have never listened to Rush, but the thing about it is that right now, because someone from another country came here and they were exposed to it, this plays right into his hands so that he can come up with, his dreamy statements that it's this guy, this group of people doing this, and totally ignoring the whole general and the overall evidence of everything, instead of picking out what you want to pick out to perpetuate your agenda. That's always been Rush Limbaugh, and that will always be him.
Steven, jump in.
But the thing with Rush is, I've listened to the show several times over the years, and it irritates me because he's not dumb. He just he knows what he's doing. And the thing about it is, let's be honest, we can't unless it's going to get to like maybe close to 1,000 people, maybe even 500 here in the U.S. There's no way the U.S. is going to shut down all the planes and things. We got 88 countries flying into the U.S. in and out every day with transferring people, God knows however many places. There's no way there's that many control. That's why we spend so much money, and not just in military effort, but a lot of people don't understand that a lot of money is also into the International Red Cross and also medical, because to prevent things. That's where we just getting Ebola. God knows if we didn't spend that money, granted, I do believe sometimes it's excessive and we could do things better. But if we didn't spend that money, God knows what other diseases we would be having here in the U.S. or throughout the world. So there's only so much you can do regarding on that. It's just more of education.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And not only that, even if you did shut down the borders, that's no guarantee that you will stop someone from penetrating your borders. The borders are too wide open. It's not something that's feasible or really something that really can be done, because 21 days. In that 21 days, if someone has the intent and the resilience to get to the United States, they think they've been exposed to it, and they want to get to the United States to get treatment, they're going to get here. If they have the means, they're going to get here, because they can go route, a totally different route. So it's not something that can be easily done. It's virtually almost impossible to shut down the borders, as Rush is saying. It's easy to say as a talk show host, because the only thing that you have to do is create the pandemonium and create you can sensationalize everything. But you don't have to make the decisions on how to do something like that, and to see what it actually costs and how it would be played out, and you would see how ineffective that would be, because someone in that case, if they wanted to get here in the United States, they will get here.
Steven?
The other thing is that it's a new strand, but that's the other aspect that people don't understand. It's a new strand, and it seems to be multiplying and changing as it goes. So without a number of test cases that we have, because he's, like you said, he's trying to say this type of person, but we, like you said, we have celebrities, athletes, military that gets this, and that's necessarily going to indoctrinate the whole population. So you need different strands in order to localize this and try to find some type of way, because right now there's no perfect cure over this. They're trying some new experimental thing on the gentleman in Texas right now that they're not even sure. They just going for broke right now for the man's life just to try to save him.
Yeah. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio, flagship show Legacy Internet Radio. Thank you to everybody that's listening to us on TuneIn right now. If you need to go away from your computer, of course, you can download the TuneIn application on your mobile device and search Legacy Internet Radio. If you are unable to stay with us tonight, of course, everything that you hear now will be available on YouTube within the next day or so. Dave, I cut you off. You're about to say something?
No, and it's another thing that you have to understand is that a person with that 21-day period, and once they start to become symptomatic and start having fever, they can give it to someone else, and then they can get on a plane to go to their homeland and then travel here to. It's virtually impossible. It's really not feasible. The best thing to do is to really attack. Of course, isolate it as much as you can. And to actually, there is a better approach to Ebola, and that approach is through strengthening your immune system, educating people, because those are the things that will really make a difference. So it allow.
I'm sorry, Dave. Let me throw something out at you, man. The one thing that we had some comments made by a very prominent national figure that I'm going to introduce here in a minute. I think if you know me, you know who that figure is and what those comments were, but I'm going to hold off of that for just a minute. I want to ask you this, Dave. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a very similar type of what I like to call fear-mongering, and that fear-mongering was built around a disease called SARS. Now, I don't really want to get into the differences between what SARS is and what Ebola is. I don't really think that that's relevant. What I do want to talk about is the I guess, to use the word that was used here earlier, the pandemonium that could potentially come out. Do you see any parallels, Dave? And just asking for your personal opinion. Do you see any parallels between the way the reporting is being done on SARS and the way the reporting is being done on Ebola several years apart?
It's funny. I do, and it's if you look at SARS, it was. And not only that, remember the swine flu.
Swine flu was the other one that I couldn't remember which one. I knew it was I knew it was two other ones, and I couldn't remember it, so I didn't even try to. But that's what it was: swine flu, right. SARS, and now Ebola. Any parallels in the way this is kind of coming out to the masses?
Yes, but if you investigate it deeply and look at the evidence that's there, the thing with SARS was that it attacked the Asian community specifically. It was much more of a Asian virus, and the key with that was that the United States and Asia, China, were at a crossroads. And what happens, there was, before the total demise of the U.S. currency and the transformation of power, the dollar hegemony losing its, in the military losing its position in the overall economic and military and petrodollar status was being threatened there. And so I think there was a big push to destabilize that region. And I say that because of this. With Ebola, there's a big fight among the Russia, China, the U.S., and the European nations for consuming Africa's natural resources. Just before the Ebola outbreak happened, there was a million ounces of gold that was discovered in Sierra Leone, and they tried to. In Liberia, and they tried to get all of the people to move out of that area so that that gold can be brought to market, because right now there are a lot of countries that are repatriating their gold, and the United States is saying no to them. So how does this all play in? Well, Ebola just all of a sudden came in at that exact place, in that exact region. This new outbreak came in at that time. It's destabilization. And so that's what I'm seeing, because there's a big fight for the natural resources of Africa. China said that they would give Ghana over $10 billion. A couple of months ago when all of the African nations were invited here to the White House, and President Clinton said that they would give all of Africa $14 billion. Well, China was just giving Ghana $10 billion by themselves. So there's a big push and a big fight. And I think this is definitely playing out in this whole arena. So, yes, I see a lot of, without really going into it, there are a lot of similarities there.
I agree with you. And when we talk about SARS in particular, we talk about how it was dominating in the Far East and how it specifically affected many people of that nationality. And then, of course, with Ebola being kind of based in Africa, it's kind of taken out a lot of the Africans there. And, of course, some of the Caucasian or white folks that are getting it, and, of course, either bringing it back or being dealt with over there.